as we think about, and this is not like proprietary, like Meta has a publicly available PM interview guide that everyone can just go to their website and find. But the key dimensions that I think Meta is looking to evaluate in the leadership and drive interview fall into four primary buckets. The first one is resourcefulness and results, which is all about, can a candidate really deliver results when things go off the rails or when they're lacking resources? And can they get on the scoreboard in a certain way? The second bucket is seeking growth and learning, which is, does a candidate seek feedback and learn from their mistakes, or do things just like happen to them and they keep going without changing anything about how they operate in the world? The third bucket is around taking ownership and accountability. So does this person actually step up and lead without, really being told, and do they take responsibility for what happens and learn from it? And then the last major bucket, the fourth one, is really about around conflict resolution and team collaboration, and how this person builds trust, navigates conflict, aligns with stakeholders. So those are the four main buckets. And I'd love to go kind of maybe one by one with the two of you and hear a bit more about what are the kinds of things that, as you reflect on your experience as interviewers and maybe even as coaches for people, when you're like, wow, that's like a really good answer. What are the kinds of things? I know we're not going to have time to get into specific stories in this format, but what are the kinds of things that stand out along each of those dimensions that you feel like make a very strong response? And maybe Brian, we could maybe start with you this time. But as you think about maybe that first bucket, the resourcefulness bucket, I'm curious what kind of stands out to you there.
Yeah, so I think this is all about exhibiting attributes of the company's values. And one of the company's values is scrappiness, right? And so can you deliver results in the face of setbacks, in the face of surprises, and how do you lead the team through that? And so I think this has a number of sub-components. So one is, like, can you foresee and anticipate, the things that can go awry when you're building products and features, right? If those things are outside of your immediate circle of control, even if they're, a second or tertiary circle of control, do you take responsibility and ownership over them, or just kind of throw up your hands and say, oh, well, there was a dependency on this framework team. They didn't deliver the API. So like we had to slip our things out. Or are you the kind of PM that like builds and establishes that relationship with the PM, anticipates things in advance? When you get some early signal that things are going sideways or could be delayed, are you able effectively to go in there in a proactive way, get your hands dirty, influence that team, and get the thing done, all while balancing the needs and requirements of both your team and whatever team you have a dependency on? Lastly, I think this is, largely about operating in a realm where there's a lot of ambiguity, and one needs to demonstrate, bringing clarity to that ambiguity, being resourceful and again, scrappy in terms of like making assumptions and delivering things anyway, even if it's not perfect or even if you do not have the clearest guidance.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Brian. Robert, anything you would add to that you think people should
Yeah,
know about that part of the interview?
I think a lot of it is about um, being able to ruthlessly prioritize. There is a saying at Meta that if it doesn't hurt, it's not prioritization. That like you really do need to be focused on the right thing. It's like if you can't do both, which one is most important? And really knowing that, making sure that your team is focused on the right goals is part of driving results. And I think on the resourcefulness side, there's lots of kind of analogies about what role the PM plays. And I think the one that Meta probably leans closest to is the conductor analogy, that like conducting an orchestra. But I would also say that at Meta and at lots of places that are scrappy, sometimes you have to step in and play the instrument yourself. and being that like kind of, oh, I don't have a data scientist. Oh, I don't have a UX. I can't get a UX researcher to go and find out about this. As a PM, again, building on Brian's point, if you just hold up your hands and say, so no user research for us, like, well, no, find a way, do it yourself, borrow an expert from another team, whatever it happens to be, but just keep your team moving forward. And that kind of scrappiness is at the heart of it. That's like, if you need something, then, do whatever you can. Don't, and keep moving, don't wait. I think that's the other thing. And adding to Brian's point, I think, all the way through this, probably one of the worst things you can do in L&D is to blame somebody. That's like, oh, leadership didn't support us. Oh, the other team had the wrong priorities. Any of those things. It's like, well, if you needed the other team's priorities to change, why didn't you go in and change it? You failed to get leadership support. Is it if it's like leadership didn't support my idea, well, that's on you, right? It's not that leaders decided badly. If you had the right idea, you should have driven it. So again, I think, we'll talk more about this in ownership, but I think that anywhere where I see someone blaming, where it's like, my eng lead wasn't proactive. It's not to say you can't criticize people, but or to point out their weaknesses, but you should be doing something about it. And I think that's also part of resourcefulness. If my eng lead isn't hugely collaborative, I've got to help them become collaborative. Again, that's part of resourcefulness, is like piling in to do whatever. So yes, be the conductor, but know that sometimes you got to run down into the orchestra pit and actually pick up the instrument and play. You won't play it as well as an expert, but it'll get played, and that's kind of what matters in these situations.